Hello, ninth graders. This is our first lesson for the Middle Ages unit. This is Unit 5. We are in the 4th marking period, so moving forward, make sure that we're not doing any old work from the 3rd marking period. That's going to be key. If you have any questions about that, please reach out, ask me to clarify if you need to understand. All right, our goal for this lesson is to describe how the fall of Rome affected Western and Eastern Europe during the post-classical era. So we're going to answer this main question: how did the fall of Rome impact Western and Eastern Europe? Now, our previous unit on the classical era, we talked about ancient Rome, Greece, specifically Athens, China. You met Qin Shi Huangdi from China. Was he the greatest emperor ever? I don't know. I'll leave that up to you historians to determine that. And we also learned about India again, following our ancient India unit. So here we are, we're talking about Western and Eastern Europe. It's broken up into two main parts, and that's what we're going to talk about. And these two main parts become a reality after the fall of Rome. Now, the Roman Empire was massive. And we're going to talk about how did such a massive, powerful, strong empire fall apart. And it's also important to note that an empire does not fall apart or decline overnight. It took hundreds and hundreds of years for the Roman Empire to decline. And as a result, we then have the Middle Ages. So we're going to talk about the causes. Oops, don't want to do that. We're going to talk about the causes of the fall of Rome and the effects of the fall. So we're going to skip down here. Now, I did this in one of the previous lessons, getting started with the classical era. We're talking about time periods. All of 9th grade is talking about, you're learning about different time periods throughout this course. So again, we started with the Neolithic era. Then we went to the ancient civilization, or the early River Valley civilization era. Then the classical era. And now we're in the post-classical era, or the Middle Ages. And reading up here, the Middle Ages are the time period from 476 CE to around 1450 CE in Western Europe. So look at the amount of time span this is. For extra credit, do this math and send me the difference in an email. Sometimes the whole post-classical era is referred to as the Middle Ages, but it is referred to the Middle Ages because historians viewed it as a less important time period between Rome and the early modern period. And since Rome and the birth of the early modern period happened in Europe, we will only consider the Middle Ages to be an era specific to Europe. So to break that down, essentially what we're saying is the Middle Ages is a time period between these years, and it only took place in Europe. South America, for example, did not have a Middle Ages era. Other continents, North America, did not have a Middle Ages era. All right, so that's important to note. If I were to ask you to do a word association and say Middle Ages, you would identify the Middle Ages as having to do with Europe, maybe Eastern and Western, specific dates like these, or post-classical era, or pre-modern era, or you could call it the early modern era. All right, so medieval Europe, medieval, that's how you say this word, medieval, equals Europe during the Middle Ages, equals the 5th century, or the 400s, to the 15th century, the 1400s. All right, I really like how this breaks that down for you. In 476 CE, the fall of Rome. After the fall of the western part of the Roman Empire, there was chaos, violence, and danger. People began to leave towns and cities to band together in the countryside for protection and survival. A new social, economic, and political structure called feudalism, this bold word here, that's how you say that, feudalism, developed to create order and stability. So fast forward to about 1450 CE, and we have the invention of the printing press by Johann Gutenberg, and we actually just celebrated his birthday, or the anniversary of the printing press, just at the end of last week. Fall of Constantinople in 1453. Voyages of Christopher Columbus and the discovery of America in 1492 for the Europeans. All right. Now, and I say that it was the discovery for the Europeans because obviously North America already existed and people had already been inhabiting North America before Columbus and his crew arrived. And then we have the Protestant Reformation in 1517. So there's a lot that we're going to be discussing in this unit. Again, we're just starting with how did Rome fall, why, and what was the impact of that. So why did the Roman Empire fall? How did this lead to the development of medieval Europe and the Byzantine Empire? Now, we're not going to answer all of these questions, but I'm going to have you do a couple things in the Edpuzzle. So first, we're going to read They Say. Basically, this is smarter historians than any of us say there were several reasons for the decline, including invasions, increased taxes, and political instability. So in the Edpuzzle, what I want you to do now is, for this question, identify two causes for the decline of the Roman Empire. Identify two causes for the decline of the Roman Empire. You should be able to get 3, but give me 2. Thanks. All right, now what I'm going to have you do is I'm just going to read through this a little bit because it is important. The Roman Empire did not just fall one day. Instead, it slowly declined over several hundred years. During the years of decline, emperors attempted to make reforms or changes to make things better to prevent the Roman Empire from completely falling apart. In 284 CE, Emperor Diocletian, that's how you say his name, Diocletian, decided that the empire was too large and should be split into an eastern and western province. Each province had its own emperor. Diocletian kept the wealthy eastern province for himself and gave the weaker and poorer province to another emperor. During the years of decline, emperors attempted to make reforms or changes to prevent the Roman Empire from completely falling apart. In 330 CE, Emperor Constantine established the new capital of the Roman Empire called Constantinople, named for himself, as you might be able to tell, in the eastern province. The eastern province of the empire became the center of power. Despite all these reforms, by 476 CE, the western province of the Roman Empire fell. As I mentioned before, it took hundreds of years of the Roman Empire to decline and fall into a split empire and chaos and violence. I want you to go back up to the parts that I had read to you, and I want you to find the first mention of reforms being made by an emperor. And I want you to find that date that was mentioned. Then I want you to come back down to what we read down here, And I want you to find the latest date, or the most recent date having to do with the decline of the Roman Empire. And I want you to do that math. How long did it take for the Roman Empire to fall based on this information since Emperor Diocletian tried to make reforms and split up the empire into Eastern and Western, and then to evidence that the Roman Empire was unsalvageable. All right, do that math in the Edpuzzle. All right, so now we're looking at Western Europe versus Eastern Europe during the Middle Ages. All right, Rome has fell. The entire massive area that includes Europe, parts of Asia, and parts of Africa, which was all the Roman Empire, completely surrounded the Mediterranean Sea, is now split up into two different parts. And again, here is a definition of the Middle Ages. Time period from 476 CE to around 1450 CE in Western Europe. Sometimes the whole post-classical era is referred to as the Middle Ages, but it is referred to the Middle Ages because historians viewed it as a less important time period between Rome and the early modern period. And since Rome and the birth of the early modern period happened in Europe, we only consider the Middle Ages to be an era specific to Europe. All right, I read it again because it's important. So we've got the two provinces broken up here in color. The red is the Western Europe or medieval Europe, and the Eastern Empire is Byzantine Empire. So here is Spain, Portugal, France. This is England. All right, Italy looks like a boot. This is North Africa, part of North Africa. This is the other half of North, but this is northeastern Africa. And then this is part of Asia Minor, a little bit of Saudi Arabia today, Greece, all right, getting into maybe a little bit of Austria up here, okay? So that is what Middle Ages or medieval Europe looked like and the Byzantine Empire. Let's talk about government real quick. Europe and the Eastern Roman Empire from 533 to 600. What was the government like now? So Western Europe, medieval Europe, Western Europe was divided up into small kingdoms ruled by kings who often fought against one another. These kingdoms were often based on common cultures. For example, those who spoke French lived in the kingdom of the Franks. And that would be here. There was no government that controlled all of Western Europe as there was when the Roman Empire was in control. What's the difference between Western Europe and Eastern Europe when it comes to government? Let's find out. Ruled by the Eastern Roman Empire, later referred to as the Byzantine Empire, who had a ruling structure similar to the Roman Empire. The Byzantine Empire brought stability to the region. All right, so medieval Europe, kings are fighting against one another. They're having their own knights and common people fight against another kingdom's common people and knights. This is chaos. This is violence. This is not ordered. This is not structured. There is no control here. Byzantine Empire, stability of the region, order, control, structure, laws, probably a stronger economy, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Religion. So here we're looking at a modern picture. This is our Pope. This is the Roman Catholic Pope today. And this is the equivalent of the Pope, but for the Eastern Orthodox Church. Right, and they are standing outside a holy building in Jerusalem. So looking at religion, Western Europe, medieval Europe, Roman Catholic Church. Okay, Roman Catholic Church.